Mark, ¿cómo estás?
Yeah. Hey, what's going on?
But you understand that.
Yeah, we just agreed with Mark. I'm gonna say this in English real quick. That this interview is gonna be in Spanish.
Mark was just down in Costa Rica for 2 weeks learning Spanish, so he's ready for this.
I was my way through. I wasn't learning anything.
What was a difficult part of communicating in Spanish in Costa Rica? The food?
Just anytime I had to try to communicate with someone who didn't speak any English.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess that's...
Most of the people that knew a little bit, at least enough to get by.
But I guess you learned some Spanish words, right?
Not on that trip. Years and years ago, my wife and I went to Cuba, and before we did, we took a very quick crash course in Spanish, and I learned the word zanahoria.
Zanahoria, yeah, carrot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a very important word because it has a lot of vitamins and
and you can live from carrots too.
Also, you have a very good memory.
The class was taught by a woman from Argentina. She kept saying Argentina. When her accent is very different than the accent in Cuba.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, yeah. We're live now from Mexico. And well, Mark, we just introduced the song, but we never introduced you. We are here with Mark Arm, who's the lead singer from Mudhoney.
Sí, estamos aquí con Mark Arm, el vocalista, pues.
Así
y fundador
es, sí.
de Green River y de Mudhoney. Imagínense ustedes el nivel.
Historia.
La historia de la música que estamos hoy el día entrevistando.
So how are you, Mark? How's Seattle today?
I'm well. I have a whole bunch of carrots in my fridge, and I'm very happy. Seattle, I mean, things are tough everywhere right now. Seattle seems to be doing okay in terms of, people responding in a scientific manner to things.
Yeah. That's important to have a scientific base for the things we do.
Yeah, there's a lot of bullshit information out there that.
Totally.
But tell us a bit about the music scene right now. Obviously, the whole world has changed. Mexico, we're going back to DIY and small shows. Finally, we can see some live music. But what's happening right now in Seattle? Seattle is one of the biggest music cities in the world. So how is this pandemic doing in Seattle with music?
They just reinstated an indoor mask mandate. So there's some venues that had opened up like a couple months ago, to shows, and they weren't checking anyone's vaccination records or anything like that. And like bartenders who had been vaccinated and gotten COVID, they didn't get sick, but they've gotten, they tested positive.
Yeah.
So like vaccines did what it was supposed to do, which was kept them from dying.
Yeah.
But, so now a lot of the like punk rock's independent venues have gotten together and they decided that you have to show proof of vaccination in order to get in, which I think is fucking good.
Yeah, totally. We agree with that.
I just don't. I mean, this country is such a fucked up crybaby rich country where people, I don't want to take the fucking vaccine. Where there's people in the rest of the world who are dying to get a vaccine.
Well, there are people here in Mexico dying to get the vaccine, and vaccination here has been a total disaster here. So we were in the U.S. A couple of months back, and we were surprised because nobody seemed to care about the fucking COVID anymore. Like you could get into a bar without a mask and nobody asked anything and just, drink a couple of beers and play pool and whatever, and nobody really cared, which is weird.
Well, we were in Florida.
Miami.
Well,
yeah. Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, but it was crazy because here in Mexico it's you can't. Well, the pandemic here, of course, has been very tough as well as the rest of the world, of course. But you get in a bar and you cannot do it without a mask.
Right.
So,
right.
So yeah, it was like a crazy image to get into a place, and we were in a shop, like a dressing shop or whatever, and people was in the shop without the mask. So that was like a pretty impressive thing to see after 2 years, because we haven't seen that scene in 2 years. It's like people without a mask in a indoor place. It's crazy.
And you've seen what the fuck is happening in Florida, right?
Yeah, totally.
I mean,
it's a mirror.
Fucking asinine.
Yeah, but we're here to talk about music. Because
look, I don't want to talk about 30 years ago. Now.
We're gonna get to a COVID hole.
Analyzing COVID with Mark Arm live on La Bestia Radio.
Yeah, well, but it's fun to talk about, being responsible about the virus with someone. I mean, we think of Mudhoney and see old videos on YouTube and stuff, and you seem like the most irresponsible band in history. I actually saw a video of your dressing room or a hotel room when someone was setting his hair on fire.
Yeah. That is a good one.
We're irresponsible, but we're not stupid.
Yeah.
Totally.
Sometimes we're stupid.
We all have been.
Well, I guess things have changed over the years in this band, but do people still set their hair on fire in the dressing rooms and do stuff like that? Or are you more now like
drinking tea?
Like drinking tea and being
and good
like
scotch and
adults and probably more grown up?
No one in the band lights their hair on fire anymore.
That's sad to know, actually. We were wanting to talk about that a lot.
Yeah, about the hair on fire. No, but when things change, you have obviously more years, and when you're still making music, it's the same vibe than when you guys started, or it's different now as a band,
Well, it's different. I can't really put my finger on how, but I mean, it's for Mudhoney, it's 30 years later.
Yeah.
Things are going to change no matter what. I mean, the process of songwriting is generally the same, but like everyone's influences have expanded. We're 30 years older and we listen to a wider variety of music. So.
That is a good point, actually, because things are very, very, very different now. The music industry is very, very different, and I'm curious on what you guys listen to, like now. Do you have like, well, of course, and you're in SubPop and you're basically very well informed of new bands, but what are you listening to nowadays?
Oh, fuck. I don't even know. Whenever I'm asked this question, I don't know even where to begin. A lot of the same things that I used to listen to a lot.
Yeah.
Like our obvious influences. And, like somewhere in the 90s got really, really heavily into jazz, and then especially stuff that's kind of on the freer side. Not like Kenny G, but more like, Pharaoh. And like the stuff that is kind of newer. I mean, this isn't really new, but like the two of the people that I admire the most are like John Dwyer and Ty Segall. I think they do incredible. I don't understand how they keep doing so many records and that are all the quality that they are. It's pretty impressive to me.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
I think it is amazing.
Yeah, well, now that you mention it, I guess I can hear the influence that you had on Ty Segall and that you also had on the OCs. I've never thought of it, but your sound, your fuzz sound, the pedals that you use are also the pedals that those bands use nowadays. And I wanted to know, when you started using like the super fuzz and the what was the other one?
The Big Muff.
The Big Muff pedal. Yeah,
they were cheap at that moment. Actually,
now they are expensive. Now they are cool.
Yeah, but you found those pedals, and those pedals weren't fashionable back then. How did you found those pedals and started using them?
We got the super fuzz. Steve was working at a sushi restaurant, and there was this guy who worked there who was a little bit older, who played in punk bands. And Steve had just gotten a guitar and an amplifier for the first time, but he didn't know anything about distortion pedals or anything like that. And he was just kind of like, it was going plink, 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 plink. And he's like, this isn't sounding the way it's supposed to sound. And he was telling that to the person he was working with, who the next time they had a shift together handed him a super fuzz. Like he just had the super fuzz. And by this point, this guy who had been in punk rock bands was now sort of more into like new wave bands that were like playing kind of more with like MIDI kind of stuff and like at that time really modern gear. And to him, I think that the super fuzz was just like, oh, that's just this garbage from the 60s that I don't need anymore, right?
Yeah.
Whereas we're like, this sounds like the Stooges and the Cramps, you know, like who were more of a contemporary band at the time. But this is a thing that like, this is the sound that one of the sounds that we're looking for. And kind of stumbled across the Big Muff in a similar way. And then like first time Dinosaur Jr. came through town, we noticed that like Jay was playing through 2 Big Muffs at once.
And you think that shapes obviously the sound of the band, but if you got a metal sound, Mudhoney will be so different, or you think?
I don't know. There's a reason we don't really do acoustic records.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
I think there's this misbegotten idea that like if you play everything acoustically, you'll hear the essence of the song, and I think that's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, it is.
You know, the essence of the song is the sound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. And I think, loudness is a big factor of it because, we have here rehearsal rooms. And I think that I hear a lot of bands saying, like, no, you have to practice, like, in really low volume so that you can hear everything. And I wanted to know what's Mark's opinion on that because I don't imagine Mudhoney, like, rehearsing, like, on like really low volume.
Can you lower the volume of your amp, please? Yeah.
Well, at this point, we have all lost a certain amount of hearing.
Of course.
Yeah.
And we try to actually protect it by wearing earplugs in our practice room. And the practice room is in my house. So we don't crank it up to full volume because we don't want to piss off the neighbors too much.
Of course. We like to do that here.
But, you know, like I'm actually kind of I don't regret many things, but the one thing I could say that I wish I had done earlier was at least wear earplugs going to shows. Because my wife tries to talk to me and I can't fucking understand what she's saying.
that is a totally good advice to us. So because we like things loud, of course, here. But in terms of hearing loss, it's of course a good idea to low the amp's volumes, but yeah, maybe I don't know what do you think, but here bands I think after the pandemic, for example, I think maybe guitar got rediscovered because I don't know how things were in Seattle before, but before the pandemic here in Mexico, you wouldn't be so used to see guitar bands. And now after the pandemic, maybe people inside in their lockdowns bought a guitar, and now you're hearing Super Fuzz again, and you're hearing Big Muff again, and you're hearing these things again that before the pandemic weren't so so usual to see.
What was happening before the pandemic?
Well, here is a peculiar thing because we don't really have like a lot of rock bands. The media here wants to sell us that we have huge rock bands, but it's not true.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's the same all over the world. You know, they try to sell us
that
here
rock is
in
dead
bands. No, that rock is dead. They try to sell us that rock is alive, and that we are listening to alternative rock and to indie rock.
But it's not the rock.
It's like Kings of Leon's, the Kings of Leon, and they
it's
tell
like
us
Mexican Kings of Leon.
Yeah, this is alternative rock for the major labels. And they try to sell us like this, like dreamy pop bands, and telling us it's indie music, and it's not. They're signed to a major label.
Right.
And
yeah, now it's more like a indie, do-it-yourself stuff, more on the mainstream now.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good.
That's precisely my point. That was not so usual before, at least here in Mexico. It was not so usual before the pandemic because the things here had a very clear trend. And now, I think it's very exciting here that we, after the pandemic, we see more and more rock bands, punk bands, and we hear fuzzes, and we hear distortion, and we hear loud volume, and we hear people wanting to hear that.
People are probably frustrated and they want to scream.
Exactly. And we discussed this before, and we think that rock and roll is now where it's meant to be. You know, it's like it's not a mainstream thing. That rock, when they started, you know, it's like underground scene that.
Yeah. At this point, rock and roll is totally underground. It's like kind of blues and jazz became. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, the pop music is one thing. There's always going to be pop. Whatever's popular. That's just what that means, right? Yeah. For a while, especially in the beginning, you know, from like the late 50s through, I don't know, the 70s, rock music kind of kept going in and out of pop. Like, right? Like, so with the original guys, like, oh God, this is boring. You know, like Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and Elvis, and you know, and even the Everly Brothers, you know, like they had hits, and then like that kind of died down, and you had like these sort of like pop idols like Fabian or whatever. But then with kind of like the Beatles and the Stones, like rock kind of got into the pop charts again. But at the same time, you would have like, How Much Is That Doggy in the Window, and just really
exactly
dumb little songs. And, you know, if I think about like what I was listening to as a kid in the late 60s and early 70s on the radio, you would have like, you know, Alice Cooper next to a really dumb song like Billy Don't Be a Hero.
Yeah.
You know, just like, so that lived next to each other for a while. And that it doesn't really anymore. Yeah. I mean, the best rock bands at this point, I think, are fully underground. Well, I'm glad we were able to cobble together a deluxe version. But, you know, it seems like a good record to me. But I don't want to go around bragging.
Well, that's a record to brag about. I mean, if I would have recorded that record, I would brag of it the whole time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like really interesting. Well, these guys grew up listening to Mudhoney, and I was like born into it because I'm really young. But that's something I wanted to talk about also. Like, your fans have obviously changed. People like these guys bought the album when it came out, and I wasn't born when it came out. So how have your fans and the generation and the people who are listening to music to your music changed? Do you go to a show and are the same people from 30 years back, or do you see like a lot of young people getting into punk rock?
We see a mix of both, you know, which is, I think, a healthy thing. Instead of just like only playing to people our own age and who are maybe 10 years younger or something.
Yeah.
The fact that there are people who are high school age or maybe even younger who are excited about it and curious about it. I mean, that stokes me out for sure.
And when you compose something new, you are thinking on that new people, or you are like in your world thinking on you?
When we make music, we think of ourselves and just trying to please ourselves. And and our philosophy is if other people like it, that's great. And if they don't, who cares?
Exactly.
I mean, I saw a video of you saying something very interesting, that it's when you play a show for the fans, you're fucking up, or you say something like that.
Up, yeah.
And that's true. It's really true.
I think that's what's happening in Mexico scene, because here people is trying to like so bad that I think that's a bad thing. And I understand your words, because here we don't have like a lot of offer of good things, because of that. Because people and artists, most of the artists, I'm not generalizing. Of course,
we're talking about major artists. We have an amazing, beautiful, independent punk rock scene.
Exactly, underground, of course.
But it's underground.
But we keep doing things underground, and I don't know what you think about this, Mark. But why do you think the same bands from the last 30 years keep playing the big festivals?
Headlining.
I mean, I don't say that playing Lollapalooza determines what a successful band is, but it happens the same in Mexico. When you go to Vive Latino or Corona Capital, which are like the Lollapalooza of Mexico, you see the same bands every year. Well, of course they change year to year, but after 5 years, it's the same bands back.
Headlining
mostly. And you see like some small bands that getting opportunities there, but there's what the big crowds are. So what do you think on that? Like, do you think that there is a chance for new bands to become big as maybe Mudhoney was 30 years back?
I don't know. There's, I guess, a chance for anything, but I wouldn't count on it. Seriously, the idea that like a band is going to be huge, that your band is going to be huge, I mean, the odds are stacked against you.
Yeah.
So, and in order to like be huge, you have to please a large group of people.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult thing to do. And if you're just basically interested in fame or money, there are better ways to go about it than being in a band.
Yeah.
Like go work at a bank and then steal from that bank.
When you start as a musician, how many hours do you rehearse all at that time? It was different now, because I think bands now don't play too much. It's like they play for 2 hours every 15 days and they want to make a hit. And I'm of the idea that it's really hard that way. You have to practice more. You have to be in a room with the people more time to make better songs. I don't know what you think about it.
Well, let me give you context about this question. Mario is a record producer.
Well,
and he's always frustrated because he goes with bands into the studio that never rehearse and don't know how to play their instruments.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't know how it was at your era. Of your moment. It was different.
When we were younger and we all lived in the same town, like right now, Steve lives in Portland, which is 3 hours away. We practice a couple times a week, and probably 3 to 4 hours a night. But nowadays, Steve lives in Portland, so it's just a matter of like when he can get into town.
Yeah.
And so, it's been like that for the last several years, which is probably why we've only put out a record every 5 years.
That's interesting. And how have you guys done it? Like, do you always get together, or do you, for example, are in your home and record something and send it over? Because that is different from what in the 90s used to be. Now you have technology. So technology, of course, makes things easier and can make things uglier too, but can make them better as well.
We've sent each other some riffs that like we've all individually come up with or whatever, but nothing really good happens till we all get together.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? Like, whenever you bring something to the band, like whoever brings it might have an idea of how this thing is going to go, but once everyone else starts putting their playing, it'll change, and it usually changes for the better.
Yeah.
You know, like you don't. It doesn't. There's no band leader in Mudhoney, which I am thankful for. And I think to really work as a band, you have to actually just work together as all people, you know, and everyone kind of has an equal say and footing.
Well, that's very interesting that you say that, because I hear both point of views. Before working like completely in independent music, I used to work with major artists. And I remember going to the labels, into the major labels with those artists, and always there was always like one band leader in those bands, and I think that makes things more like plastic, you know. And you see when you hear a real band that they take something from everyone in the band. So I guess that's what happening. That's what happens to Mudhoney, right? That it's not just one person. It's like a lot of influences from lots of different persons. Well, 4 different persons going into one song. Am I right?
Yeah, you know, I think if you just have like a quote unquote band with one person who's leading, who's calling the shots, who's writing all the songs, it's not really a band.
Yeah.
It's just it's probably a corporation or something that's in that guy
dictatorship.
And everybody else is basically a hired gun. And I think if you're working in a situation like that where you feel like you call the shots to everyone else, you're just only going to create unhappiness and a little bit of discord, and people are going to feel like they just don't have the voice that they should have.
Yeah.
I think it's just like it's a combination of ego, and it will lead to failure. Although, you know, like some of these, like say the Smashing Pumpkins, it's clearly Billy Corrigan, right?
Yeah.
That didn't lead to failure in a commercial sense, but maybe in a human sense.
Yeah, totally. And they don't seem like the old band they used to be in the 90s.
Yeah.
Well, you listen to them now, and they're not as real as they used to be.
No.
But, well...
Who listens to them now?
Totally.
But that's interesting. That's interesting because that's kind of like the point we were talking about earlier. Who listens to the Smashing Pumpkins now? And who listens, for example, to the Foo Fighters now? And a lot of people listens to the fucking,
a lot of people do, but, you know what I mean.
The fucking Bee Gees records cover from the Foo Fighters, and there's a lot of amazing new bands, and people are stuck in the same things, and we all make fun about that because we listen to new music. But when you go to the street, you find that everyone listens to the fucking Bee Gees covers record from the Foo Fighters. Everyone's talking about that. Everyone's talking about Metallica's new fucking
cover
80 song cover album. Everyone is talking about that. When I open my phone in the morning, and every time
talking about that.
Every time a new Metallica song comes out, I get tons of messages in my phone saying like, "Oh, have you heard the new Metallica version?" It's like, fuck that. And there's people like complaining all the time about urban music and reggaeton and whatever, and saying like, "Oh, fuck that. They are killing rock and roll," but they never listen to new bands.
Yeah.
So what's you know, it's kind of like, I don't know, for us it's frustrating because we are trying to support new bands, new acts, and young people who are trying to say something new, you know, because that's, as you were saying before, this is like the cycle of life. Like, we all get older, we are older now, you are older, and that's just the cycle of life, and we have to, you know, open the door for new things. I think that's what should happen, but that's not what I'm seeing, unfortunately.
Right. You know, I mean, you know, it's very rare that a young band just leaps to the top of the charts immediately. I mean, I guess that's things that happen. Never mind. But I think in order for like, you know, a band to have any kind of longevity maybe, or even like just to be, I think it just really helps to just to focus on what you want to do for yourself and please yourself, and the external forces be damned. Maybe no one will ever hear of you, but at least you'll be, have something that you can look back on and be happy with, hopefully. Yeah. And what you guys are doing with supporting young bands and, having this radio show and releasing records and stuff, I mean, that's all you can do. And I think you're doing important work.
Thank you. That's like the coolest thing I've ever heard, because it was said by the coolest person I've ever interviewed.
Yeah, and because there's a lot of people that always tells us like, oh, but that's never gonna work. Oh, but those bands never gonna work and whatever. But we believe in it.
But I guess what's interesting about everything we've been talking about, it's something was happening in the 90s that isn't happening right now. What in the alternative scene, because there was also really horrible 90s music, but the alternative scene is amazing. Yeah. The alternative scene was amazing. And now, well, at least in Mexico City, we have a beautiful, nice, awesome alternative scene, but
healthy.
It's healthy, but it's like really small. What was happening in the 90s that's not happening right now? Because I guess Mexico is not the only place that has beautiful alternative scenes, but are really small. And back then it was huge.
Yeah, I mean, the landscape has totally changed, like how people even consume music. People stream music now, and I work for a record label in a warehouse, and we send out actual vinyl records. And people nowadays, I think there's a certain segment of the population that still buys vinyl that only think of that as a souvenir of the thing that they're streaming.
Yeah, totally.
Which is
there are people who, when I was a kid, a record was just a music delivery system. It was nothing more. It wasn't something that you just like fetishized and kept immaculate, the corner's bent a little bit, it didn't fucking matter. And a lot of times you would buy records that were cutouts that had big chunks cut out of the corner because it was cheap. And, that's how I got like the Stooges' Raw Power. It was like a $4 record. And that record blew my mind, and I didn't give a shit that the corner was cut off. I don't know what that rant had to do with the 90s and now, but you're not going to be able to replicate any time in the past. It's just not going to happen, and I wouldn't get hung up on it, and I wouldn't worry about it. Just do what you can do now.
Totally.
Off the air, we were talking a bit about SubPop, and you've been there since the beginning, and it's actually a funny story how you got there. You were one of the first bands they signed with Green River. You gave them the master, and then you broke up. So what happened there?
What happened? Obviously, if you listen to Mother Love Bone and Mudhoney, you can tell what happened.
Yeah.
And Jeff and Stone and Steve and I are still like really good friends, so it kind of worked for the best that we all parted ways musically. What else?
No, well, but it was like now I want to change like a bit to the subject, to SubPop and your history in SubPop. Can you tell us first of all a bit of what you do in SubPop?
I'm the warehouse manager, so I try to among other things, make sure everyone who works in the warehouse gets along and also does their job, and everyone does do their job. They're pretty motivated people. And my duties other than that are mainly shipping out orders to international distributors and to record stores who purchase their records directly through us.
We should talk about that before the interview also.
After the interview.
After. We cannot do it before the interview, unfortunately, because, we don't have a time machine, but yeah, I think we contacted somebody from SubPop in the past, trying to get some records here to sell here in the studio. But I don't know what happened.
But now we will.
It wasn't Mark.
It wasn't Mark. Exactly.
Of course, it wasn't you, Mark.
Did Becca set this up?
No,
Becca. Yeah, she set this interview up.
So
Yeah,
she would be able to help you out, I think.
of course.
Thank you.
Pointing in the right direction.
great, because we have many SubPop fans here in Mexico, and they will be happy to.
Yeah, but well, that's also something we should talk later. But yeah, we have here at La Bestia, we have La Bestia Sello, which is our indie music label, and it's, I think, of all the things we do here, it's the thing I'm most passionate about. I love the record
And
label.
it's new.
It's also a really new label, and we've been signing like really small bands, and we've been working with them and growing with them. But it's been like really hard because we are like this small music label against the whole big music money industry, and we're trying to do things our own way, like different. We manage royalties different as big labels, and we manage.
We don't even have contracts.
Yeah, we don't even have contracts. We do everything like really DIY. But it's like there's always something like with a big major label or a publisher, and that's like really hard to. Well, they're making things really hard for us, and well, it happened. I think things happened the same to Mudhoney and to SubPop. So I wanted to know, how do you manage to work with an indie label and with a band and go against like the system, like you did your whole lives?
Well, I just do what I do. I don't worry about the business. I don't really care about the business. It bores me to fucking tears.
Yeah.
Business side of music. When SubPop started, though, SubPop was a lot like you guys. It was just basically started by John and Bruce, two people. Bruce did a long time fanzine called SubPop. You probably know the history of that.
Of course.
And it was focused originally mostly on local bands that like were unknown outside of Seattle, and at the time, like maybe 200 people even knew of these bands in Seattle. It was really underground shit. And the fact that anything even happened, like Seattle at the time, you probably heard this too, was kind of really isolated geographically. And not every band bothered coming through. So, I don't know, things just sort of happened on their own with like people having no hope or no idea or very little thought about like, becoming huge. And then SubPop was kind of playing on that idea and then like turning it on its head and like world domination and all that crap. But that was kind of a joke. And in a way it turned out to be true. So, I mean, I guess just come up with a joke that you want to be realized.
Totally. And well, it would be an honor if we could send you a playlist from our bands so that you can listen what we are doing down here.
Yeah.
It will help a lot. Your approach, your knowledge.
Yeah. There's a lot of distortion there.
Yeah.
If you want.
Well, thanks, Mark. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for joining today.
Sure. Thank you, guys.
We'd love to.
Fascinating. This isn't your regular interview. This is great.
Thanks.
Amazing. Thanks for joining. And we'd love to have Mudhoney here at the studio. I think Alex was showing you around. I don't know if the internet connection allowed us to show you, but when the fucking pandemic allows you guys to come back, because I saw you at the Sports Palace 20 years back with opening for Pearl Jam, and there was also a show in the downtown Mexico City. You've been here more than once, but we'd love for you guys to come here and play a session here at the studio and just hang around.
We would love to come back. We've only been to Mexico City twice, so
you should.
And the last time when we came on our own and played that club show, I was very, very ill. Like I'd gotten the flu right before flying down. So everyone else enjoyed the city. I was stuck in my hotel room, like coughing. I would love to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, please don't cough this time. Now it's way scarier. And yeah, one of our radio DJs actually opened up for you that time. I don't know if you remember this guy.
Awesome.
Yeah, he opened for you guys. So, well,
Un
Mark,
saludo, Arturo.
thanks so much. Thanks for your time, for your passion to music. And that's what it matters at the end, you know.
Well, thank you for your passion for music.
I'm gonna send you then a playlist today.
Yeah.
And well,
Cool.
Mark, hope to have you here like live soon.
Real person.